I'm curious to know what was involved in the plan. I'm gonna have to read the book now. I really gotta. I gotta know.
That's funny because I'm curious what I missed on Shark Week. It's really what.
Well, that goes without saying.
Oh, okay.
Of course, I'm curious about that too.
Trump repeatedly mentioned our plan. But his attention kept going back to the Sharks.
I know we have the best plan, but this Great White is amazing.
Look at the chest. He's got three rows of teeth. Oh boy. I don't know what else to make out of this except just again, it's a big club and you ain't in it. It's a big club and you ain't in it. These are billionaires and millionaires talking, 100 millionaires talking to each other about their plan. And then Bill Clinton had a meeting with Trump right before he decided to run. Everybody says Bill Clinton encouraged him to run. Why? Because they wanted to run against Trump. They did, and they lost. That's the Pied Piper strategy. If you don't know what that is, the Pied Piper strategy was Hillary Clinton's campaign got all their minions in the press to prop up Donald Trump because she wanted to run against him. And what did they do? They showed half-hour, hour-long news shows of his empty podium. Ed Schultz told us before he died that the head of NBC News was joined at the hip with the Clinton campaign, in his opinion. He was given direct orders not to cover Bernie Sanders. So this whole idea that Trump is an anomaly and blah, 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 blah. So that's one somebody who said super predators, referencing teenage black kids, super predators, to another guy who wanted to jail the Central Park Five who were innocent. That's their conversation. Hey, how's the super predators? Do we lock up those kids yet? So to me, that's what I come away from this with. I don't know what our plan was, but it doesn't even matter. It just goes to show you they're buddy-buddy. Their kids are best friends. This is all theater now. And you know, her calling half the country deplorable. Is there what's more deplorable than gutting welfare at the same time you explode the prison population and you take food away from poor kids, and then you deregulate Wall Street, which hurts black and brown people the most? Who's deplorable now? You. That's what I would say. We repeal Glass-Steagall. You crashed the whole economy. Okay, there it is. That's super. To me, that's super interesting, and it just reinforces everything we've said here. There's one party in this country with two right wings. Please make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are subscribed, there's a good chance you're not. So please check. It only takes a second. And then click that bell. And that's how you know you'll get a notice every time we drop a video. They still won't notify you every time we drop a video, but that's the best we can do. Plus, if you like the show and you want to support it, please become a patron. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And come see a live show. Go to JimmyDoreComedy.com for our live schedule. Everybody, welcome to part 2 of our interview with progressive champion Tulsi Gabbard. What really excites me about you as a politician are two things. The first thing I want to talk to you, because it is 9/11. What is I like that you've been calling for sanity in our foreign policy, right? And because our foreign policy now is just it's regime change, and we're still in Afghanistan. Some 17 years later, no one knows what the goal is, and we're controlling less and less of the country. So I just let's just start off by saying, how do you, on 9/11, you're a veteran, how do you experience 9/11?
Oh, that's a heavy question.
You know, there are thousands of men and women all across this country, like myself, who joined the military after the attacks on 9/11 to go after those terrorists who attacked us. And to think about how many lives have been lost since, how many American lives, how many first responders' lives were lost on 9/11 and since, and those who still suffer from major health problems because of their responding to that attack, their families, veterans who come home and suffer from visible and invisible wounds, and every single American taxpayer who have had trillions of dollars taken out of their wallets to pay for these interventionist wars that our country has waged since 9/11, looking at and understanding in a very personal way the cost of war. It is a true betrayal to all those who have sacrificed so much to now sit here on the anniversary of 9/11 and hear from our country's president and his administration about how they are essentially ready to wage war against Syria and Russia in order to stop them from attacking Al-Qaeda in Idlib, in Syria. We are in this situation today because of U.S. policies in Syria specifically, as we're talking about the situation where you have 20 to 30,000 Al-Qaeda and other jihadist terrorists who are in control of this city. There are a lot of civilians there, and Trump is now talking about going to war with these countries, with Syria and Russia, if they launch this attack that they've been talking about doing against those terrorists in Idlib. And he claims to be doing it to save Syrian civilians. However, if that were the case, then why was he not then the first to stand up and support the UN's call for humanitarian corridor for civilians to evacuate from the city? Why was he not the first one calling for an actual solution to help reduce the amount of Syrian civilian casualties? And so this looking for an excuse that the Trump administration is doing, they're looking for an excuse to basically launch an attack against Syria and Russia. And my concern is I think they're doing it for two reasons. One is because if you look back over the last couple of years, the two times that President Trump has received vast positive reinforcement from the mainstream media, from Democratic leaders and Republican leaders, have been the two times that he's launched military attacks against Syria.
It's just another piece of art.
His poll numbers are dropping. So he's looking with the political calculation of what's the thing that I know will make it so people are saying nice things about me again. That's the first reason. The second reason is because there has been this long, slow regime change war happening in Syria. We've been waging this long war since 2011. And the main ground force in that war has been Al-Qaeda and these other jihadist terrorist groups. And so there have been both direct and indirect support of these groups fighting on the ground to overthrow this regime. And so they're concerned that if these terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda are taken out in Idlib, what happens to the ground force fighting to overthrow the Syrian government? And this leads us to the United States alliance with Saudi Arabia, who would like to see a Wahhabi extremist government replace the government that's in Syria. This leads to the United States alliance with Saudi Arabia and the atrocities that are occurring in Yemen. So when you look at what's happening and the fact that Al-Qaeda is stronger today than ever before, it is a true disservice, a betrayal, and dishonoring the sacrifices that have been made by so many people, by every American.
So, two questions on that. Why does Saudi Arabia want to overthrow Assad? Okay, that would be my first question.
Because he's not their puppet. They want someone that they can control.
Okay, and so, well, Syria is aligned with Iran, which is aligned with Russia. So there's lots of interests in getting rid of Assad, from Israel to Saudi Arabia. There's a pipeline. There's competing pipelines that bring natural gas to Europe. Now Russia sells most of their natural gas to Europe, so they don't want that pipeline, which gives them. So they're not going to give up on this, right? So if Trump does start a war, it'll be a real war. Like, I don't think that's what people realize.
World War III type proportions.
Yes, so people don't really realize that that's what's happening and that's what's at risk right now. Everyone thinks that that'll never happen because it never happened before. But I just want to show really quickly, you tweeted this out today. You said, well, President Trump and VP Pence give 9/11 speeches about how much they care about the victims of Al-Qaeda's attack on our country. They are simultaneously acting as protectors of Al-Qaeda in Syria, Idlib, threatening Russia and Syria that if they attack Al-Qaeda, we will punish them. So, that's just a plain fact that's true if anybody just takes an objective look at the situation. But you get pilloried for saying things like this all the time. Like, for instance, when you were skeptical of the gas attacks in Syria, when you were rightly skeptical, turns out Robert Fisk has confirmed that those gas attacks weren't what they were said to be, and that didn't make any sense that he would do that. He's winning the war. Lots of British ex-foreign ministers and the head of their navy had said the same thing. This doesn't make any sense. We need to see evidence. Well, when you asked for evidence, people like Neera Tanden said, people of Hawaii's 2nd District, was it not enough for you that your representative met with a murderous dictator? Will this move you? And it's you saying you're skeptical of the claims that Assad used. So, and then just piggybacking on that, former DNC chair Howard Dean said this is a disgrace. Gabbard should not be in Congress. Now, that's kind of super ironic because Howard Dean made his bones going against the Iraq War. In fact, when he was campaigning in 2004, he would start off his campaign speeches by saying, I'm from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And then they smeared him because he was against a war, just like they're smearing you, just like that. Like somehow you're in bed with a murderous dictator. And that's the head of the Center for American Progress, which was started by the Podestas. So, what is in it for someone like Neera Tanden to smear you for asking for evidence about Syria?
I don't know. Maybe you should have her on your show sometime.
She blocked me on Twitter. By the way, I would have her on.
Let me just point out real quick.
No one would watch if
She's
she came
talking
on.
about the people of Hawaii's 2nd District, and I am truly grateful and honored to have just been reelected in our primary election in August by 84% of Hawaii's 2nd District in a race where I was challenged by two different people, one of whom was endorsed by the National Education Association as well as our Hawaii State Teachers Association, because she disagreed with my anti-regime change war foreign policy and my strong advocacy, particularly in Syria. And so to have that kind of overwhelming statement of support by the people of Hawaii, that they are seeing through these critics and the arguments that they're making, and instead taking a stand for peace, understanding the cost of war, I think is
multiple people have been killed and wounded in Perryman, which is about 30 miles northeast of Baltimore. The shooting happened at a Rite Aid distribution center. The investigation is still fluid, but we know that the FBI and the ATF are helping out. Here's Harford County Sheriff.
Red Bull gives you wings.
Let's talk about Beto O'Rourke. He is the Democratic candidate for U.S. Senator from Texas. He's facing off against incumbent total extremist Ted Cruz, and I've been talking about this race for a while, and it is getting more and more interesting now with fewer than 8, about 7.5 weeks left at this point until the 2018 midterm elections. And if you look across the 435 seats in the House of Representatives, the 100 seats in the U.S. Senate, Ted Cruz is one of the most extreme, prominent Republicans out there. There are definitely more extreme Republicans that you've probably never heard of, but Ted Cruz ran for president. He's a well-known Republican. And if it were possible to eliminate Ted Cruz from the U.S. Senate, it would be a massive, massive accomplishment. Not only does he have the power of incumbency, Texas is a red state. It's an uphill battle. We've spoken about it before. So when in the past I've reported to you, Beto O'Rourke had some solid fundraising last month. Beto O'Rourke is looking good in a recent poll. We all sort of know that we want to be cautiously optimistic, we want to take every race seriously, but in the end, in a red state with an incumbent Republican, it would be normal to expect that undecideds and people who aren't sure if they are voting would sort of skew towards or break towards the incumbent, who also happens to be a member of the party that is dominant in that state, Republicans in Texas. But regardless, it's a very, very important race to follow. We've now learned that the Republican Party and Republican donors are so worried about the possibility of Ted Cruz being taken down by Beto O'Rourke that prominent Republican donors are diverting money that they plan to spend in other races, in other states altogether, and putting that money into helping Ted Cruz win re-election. A seat that by many accounts would normally be a very, very safe Republican seat. You might remember Rick Tyler. Rick Tyler was the communications director for Ted Cruz during his 2016 campaign, his presidential campaign, that is. He went on MSNBC and he said, this is the reality today. Beto O'Rourke is a likable guy. He's running a good campaign. He's an interesting candidate. But the important impact that that's having is that not only is it not a guaranteed win for Ted Cruz, money is now going to Ted Cruz that could go to Republicans in other parts of the country. Take a listen to Rick Tyler on MSNBC.
Beto O'Rourke has just been a very interesting candidate and has run a tremendous campaign, and he's raised a ton of money. He's sort of electrified the left. I think Ted Cruz is likable enough in Texas to win, and he should win. The problem right now is, this is a close race. This is anywhere between 0 percentage point and 4 points, which NBC has it at, and it shouldn't be. It should be a 10, 12, 15-point race. Now, here's the problem. This is a $50 million race right now, and when you have Club for Growth and Americans for Prosperity and the Koch brothers all diverting resources from races that they want to pick up, which just went through on the Democratic side, moving that money and those resources to Texas, that keeps the Republican Party from competing in other states. So Tennessee now looks like it could be a pickup because you have an unusual Democratic candidate there who is governor, a popular governor.
This is very, very, very good news because this is now bigger than Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. And what I mean by that is challenging an incumbent Republican senator in Texas and putting up a good fight, even if you lose, is a great thing if you start to influence the midterms more broadly. And that's exactly what Beto O'Rourke is doing, because every single dollar that a Republican was going to spend in Tennessee, as Tyler says, or Ohio, or wherever else, every single dollar that doesn't get spent there and instead gets spent trying to help Ted Cruz keep his seat, that not only helps Beto O'Rourke, or at least shows that Ted Cruz is in danger, but it puts other Republican seats at risk. How is the polling looking? I always am sort of very cautious when I talk about polling because I don't want to inadvertently keep anybody home. Everybody needs to go out and vote. But the polling is looking very close. It's a statistical tie. There's an Emerson College poll from last month which has Cruz at +1. +1 when your margin of error is 3 or 4 percentage points is a statistical tie. So we have an incumbent Republican senator, a very well-known one in Texas, a sort of celebrity senator in a sense, who is in a real situation where he may get knocked out. These opportunities don't come up that often, or at least in the last few decades, they haven't. This is one to work on. This is one to phone bank for. This is one to support. And before you tell me, because I know there are some of you, I look at the YouTube comments, I read my own tweets, I'm looking at my own Instagram comments. I know that there are people who are going to say, David, have you fallen for the Beto O'Rourke scam? Beto O'Rourke, some of you will say, because you already have, is not really a progressive. He is one of these finance bro, centrist Democrats who's playing progressive. That is a perfectly fair debate to have, but we're talking about Texas, and we're talking about Ted Cruz. The alternative is Ted Cruz. Don't miss the forest for the trees. This is like the people who said there's no difference between Trump and Hillary, so I'm going to vote for whoever, or I'm going to stay home. Look at how wrong they are. Look at how wrong they have been vis-a-vis the Supreme Court and so many other ways. That's missing the forest for the trees. Is Beto O'Rourke the progressive idol that I would say, if I just pick my ideal candidate, do I end up with Beto O'Rourke? Of course I don't. But we're talking about maybe knocking out Ted Cruz here, and every single one of us should be supporting Beto O'Rourke in this race. I'm pleased to tell you that today's show is underwritten by BetterHelp.com/Pacman. Therapy is important. We have a real crisis in our country, not just people who could benefit from mental health services, but the stigma that surrounds mental health services. And as many people in the audience know, lots of people in my family work in the field of mental health, and I have made it a mission of the show to, at any opportunity, make clear that there is absolutely no shame whatsoever in going to talk to someone when you feel that that's the right thing to do. And that's what BetterHelp provides. You get a fully licensed and experienced psychologist and therapist through video, phone, and text. It's less expensive than meeting in person with a counselor. After 3 months, the price goes down even more, but you get the same professional service that you would from going into somebody's office, and you also get unlimited access. You can speak to a counselor every day if you want. Signing up is easy. You go to betterhelp.com/Pacman, fill out a questionnaire. They will pair you with a therapist that works for you, but you're always able to switch to somebody else if there's a better fit available. Go to betterhelp.com/Pacman. It's so easy to sign up and get started. We're putting a link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. It is betterhelp.com/PAKMAN.
We all make mistakes. What matters is that you learn from them. I need an airway. Are we really doing this? Something is wrong.
This is a business. It's not a charity. So it's money or your life?
They missed each other. Maybe things will be different.
The Resident. Season premiere this Monday, followed by an all-new 911 on Fox.
We are going to continue scaling up our coverage of the 2018 midterm elections as we get closer and closer. Now 7.5 weeks away. And what I want to talk to you about today is that there is a major, major growing problem for Republicans and for Donald Trump. And as a result of Donald Trump's lack of popularity in the Midwest, okay, the overall advantage for Democrats in the upcoming midterms has grown significantly over the last 2 months. And there are all sorts of different voter models you can look at that look at the Senate, that look at the House of Representatives based on leaning and likely seats and different likely voter models. But the big picture is that the numbers have gone significantly in the direction of Democrats over the last 2 months. The voting group that is responsible for that swing away from Republicans and Trump-endorsed Republicans and towards Democrats are voters in the Midwest of the United States of America. They have swung 13 percentage points since July towards Democrats. And it's not just one poll. There's this national NPR Marist poll, which shows that the 2018 midterm sort of outlook has swung significantly toward Democrats over the last 2 months. If you look at Marist state-by-state polls, you will see that the big changes are in the Midwest and it is again away from Republicans and towards Democrats. Now, this could actually be, it's almost like kind of obvious, but it doesn't happen that often. This could actually be people in the Midwest realizing that Trump is screwing them big time and is screwing them specifically more than he's screwing most other people in the United States of America. Trump's abortive tariffs, which I've been talking about for months, are bad for mostly everyone. But they're especially bad for people in the Midwest who work in farming and who work in manufacturing, to pick a couple of industries. Wouldn't it be wonderful if, quite simply, people reacted to politicians passing policy that's bad for them by saying, I'm going to vote for someone else? The rich do it, right? The rich see very clearly, oh, okay, this is who's going to give me a tax cut, or this is who's going to give my business a tax reduction, and that's who I'm going to vote for, and I'm going to use the money that I have, surplus money, because I've been getting those tax cuts from Republican presidents for a long time, and I am going to refunnel it back in to people who are going to pass laws that are good for my checkbook, good for my pocketbook, good for my bank account, whatever metaphor or analogy you want to use. What if the farming industry and the manufacturing industry in the Midwest simply said, this guy's screwing us, we're going to vote for someone else. We're going to put aside what might be differences on social issues, and we're going to vote for somebody who is not actively part of the problem that is screwing us day after day after day. Now let's talk about what needs to happen in the Midwest and in other parts of the country in November. Polls are nice, but voting is what counts. And President Obama, former President Obama, has been talking about this, and so have many others. Whatever the polls say, these Midwesterners and everybody else must get out and vote. And we are going to start putting together possible sort of result scenarios. 538 has been doing some really good work on this, and there are other websites that are doing really, really good mathematical work here. And all of that matters, but every single person that watches the show, that listens to the show, needs to treat whatever race you can participate in by voting or by phone banking or by volunteering or donating. Treat every race as 50-50. Make sure you're registered to vote and actually do vote, but then if you have the means to donate, donate. If you have the time to volunteer, or if you can make time, and I think that you should, do that. And when you look at these different election previews, like the one on 538.com, check out some of those races. They'll often be ranked as safe Democrat and Republican, likely Democrat and Republican, and leaning Democrat and Republican. Those leaning and likely are the ones where get out the vote and phone banking and all of that type of activism can actually make a difference. So please, please do it. This is a massive... You should be engaged, period, because this stuff matters. And if you watch the show, you probably already are engaged to some degree. Otherwise, you'd be watching or listening to something else. But this is an opportunity in terms of the importance of these midterms that does not come up all the time. It has been a long time since there have been midterms of this degree of consequence. If you don't plan to vote, okay, I'm speaking directly to you now, please email me and explain to me why you don't plan to vote in November. I can't think of any good reasons not to vote in November, and if you don't plan to vote, other than, there's some logistical reason why you're not going to be voting, if you're going to choose not to vote, please tell me. I want to hear from you, and I also want to hear from you on Twitter, where you can find me at dpacman. Follow me there. You can also follow the show on Twitter at David Pakman Show. We'll take a quick break. We have a fantastic program for you today. Today's program brought to you in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a great service that I use all the time. What they do is they take thousands of the most popular nonfiction books, including the newest bestsellers. They condense them into 15-minute audiobooks that you can listen to, and you still get the most crucial information and insights from each book. And I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist. I recently checked out Soccernomics by Simon Cooper. We do have, after all, the World Cup going on recently. We also have been talking about BS Jobs, and there is a great new book, BS Jobs by David Graeber, which I listen to on Blinkist. They're constantly adding new books to the platform. You will never run out of fascinating and critically acclaimed books to enjoy. And our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pacman. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting a link in the video description. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. That's blinkist.com/PAKMAN.
New Amsterdam is America's first public hospital. Patients don't need insurance, money.
You do know the whole system's rigged. Dear America.
You are missing out on a lot. CRTV is on fire. Literally, we're on fire.
The Trump administration is taking a very aggressive and mostly unprecedented stance against the International Criminal Court. And this is a major red flag, yet another red flag. And it's part of this broader attack that we've been talking about on really the basic idea that the United States is not some isolated power that exists unilaterally in a vacuum, but the reality that most